Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us today. Thank you so much for attending today's presentation where we're going to be talking about simplifying compliance audits with email archiving. My name is Mary Owen, and I'm going to be helping out our hosts today. They are Bob Spurzin and Mark Johnson, who are both principal consultants here with Arcserve. So as we're going through the presentation and the demo, we would love to hear your questions. So please do send them to us using the questions section of your interface, and we will get to those at the end of the event. Today's session is also being recorded, and we will send out a copy of that recorded webcast to you guys later this week. So with that out of the way, take it away, Bob.
Thank you, Mary. And Mark, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. And Mark, I'm really excited about this webcast today. And just for the audience, I was just chatting with Mark, and we both go way back in this whole archiving business, back over 15 years. Mark, you were at CA, right? Way back in the day?
Correct, I was. Absolutely.
Okay. And I was at Legato back there on that first product, and then we both worked at Mimosa Systems. And I hung around there and went through that whole Iron Mountain and autonomy fiasco. So anyway, the point is we're excited today because I think with the two of us together, we can talk about and put this in perspective on how important archiving is in today's world. It's very, very different from when Mark and I first started way back in 2003, 4, and 5. So let's jump in. You've been reading this slide I've got on the screen. You know us, Arcserve. We've been in the backup business for a long time, over 30 years, and that I'm referring back to our original product, which was Cheyenne. We're very proud about that. So you see we have over 45,000 total customers, but most recently I'm very proud that it's been back in 2012 now, it's been over 4 years, we introduced Unified Data Protection. We're the only legacy backup product. Think of all those big names out there from Symantec and so forth. They haven't gone in and redone those old products. And the whole virtual system has totally changed back the backup world. And we came out with a completely new product, UDP. So actually with our product, you get the best of both worlds. You get all the latest features that you need to protect your virtual environments. But we don't sacrifice your legacy protection, whether it's physical servers, all our tape drive support. We've still got all that. So Arcserve really brings a great combination of both experience and the latest technology together in one product. Next slide. And here's how our product family looks today. In the middle there, today we're talking about archiving there on the right of your screen. But we've got high availability, disaster recovery, backup and restore, all the things you'd expect from UDP. Now we've added on this new piece, archiving. And that's our focus today, and we're going to talk in depth on why and what are those important use cases that you need to be aware of. But I'm going to add here that this came to us from our customers asking us to bring this together. Because as these technologies like archiving mature, they have a specific problem they solve. You need them in your portfolio. It's nice to manage them together with your data protection solution. Hence, we've introduced this product. Let's dig into the details. Next slide. We're often asked, backup versus archiving. What are the differences? And it's just to spend a minute and go over this. First of all, just the obvious. Backup is break fix. You lose something, you want to replace it. Something's corrupt, with now, what's in the news? All of the news this morning about FedEx being hit by another malware attack. So you need to have backups to restore your data to recover from something like that. So backup is just super, super important. Archive is different. We're keeping a safe copy, unalterable. We're preserving. We're keeping your data, in this case, focused on your email server. And we're saving it for multiple reasons. Back in 2003 and 4, we were using also the archives for doing a lot of recovery of individual items and folders. But Exchange has come a long way since Exchange 2003. So much of that now, if not all of it, is managed very well by Exchange itself. But what still remains are these huge use cases, and I'll give you these are the names, the compliance use cases and the legal use cases. And I want to get into those in detail. But backup and archive, to summarize, they're very, very similar. They're complementary, but they do have very distinct use cases. Okay, Mark, next slide. So here are the three use cases, and I want to first start with the storage efficiency one and explain what this means exactly. This is a little different than back in 2003 and 4 when you had small mailboxes. Remember, we just had 150 megabytes, where 300 was a big mailbox. My gosh, that would fill up in one day now. But it's a different world. The Exchange mailboxes are much larger, if not unlimited. So that's not as much the concern. But related to today with our product, what we're doing now is customers are replacing, perhaps you have a legacy email archive. And if you do, you're going to have a lot of data, perhaps from old employees, people that have left the company. You might have email you're preserving for a legal matter, or for compliance regulatory reasons, you're having to keep email on a long-term retention, 5-year, 7-year, and so forth. So this legacy archive, as you're wanting to move now, perhaps to Exchange Exchange Online, which runs in Office 365, you have this bulk of email for the use case I just described, the legal and the ex-employees. What do you do with it? You want to keep it. And so we provide a place you can put all that data and upload it into our product. And I'll show you some diagrams on the workflow and how that works. But that's the efficiency storage use case that pertains directly to our product. Number 2 here, the big one, is the compliance requirements. We're going to talk about this in detail, but it's simple to understand. Almost every industry, because these are very, very wide and sweeping across industry, healthcare, finance, you name it. They ask you to retain your email records. They are a business record for communication, and they have retention requirements. And the last one is the legal risk. Boy, Mark and I, again, referring back, in the day when, I used to sat through some seminars as a vendor. And they were talking to the lawyers and saying that, the days are gone when you can say, I don't know where the email is. I don't know what backup tapes are or what PSTs are. That's old news now. The lawyers all understand this. They've been trained on it, and they go after it. So in areas of discovery, it's on the responsibility of the vendors. You got to be on top of your game. So you have to be able to access your email records promptly, or you suffer the additional cost of doing a lengthy forensics type discovery search, gosh forbid, recovering email tapes, finding PST drives, and so forth. So managing this whole legal risk in response to a request to search your email records is an important responsibility, and that's exactly a use case we can help with this product. Next slide. So just quickly, here's a nice, I'm very visual and I like to see things. Here's the storage use case. So clearly we have a legacy archive. So on the left there might have been a typical configuration from 2000 up to 2013. Many of you are doing this on-premise Exchange. You have an archive system sitting next to it, and it's got separate storage. Now, replacing that, you have this, I got to move that old email out. I want to save it. You can bring it over, and it's via a PST file transfer. So working with your archive, your legacy archive that has a PST export function, or their specialty migration vendors, either way, they will provide PSTs containing all the contents, usually one per mailbox, and those can be then ingested into our system and stored and accessed and searched. All right, next slide. For the compliance use case, here's how it looks. We have your mail server on the left. I'm mentioning Exchange, but we support all leading mail servers. We know Exchange dominates, but in the fashion here, showing the J for Journal, that's specific to Exchange. But the other products like Domino Notes and GroupWise, they have equivalent functions that can do the same thing. So via this process, it's called journaling. It sends a copy of every mail sent and received, and you get to pick the mailboxes that you want to turn this function on. And that messages are then sent to a target, which is our system, and they're stored there. So this gives you that, importantly, it for a given source, mailbox, whoever that custodian is, that guy, we're going to capture everything he sends and receives. And that's been kind of the measure of the law for going back when journaling was introduced way back in 2003, and it's been proven in court, and we provide, importantly, support for that same function today. What support is needed? Someone has to be that target. Someone has to receive that journal mail. Exchange, whether it's an on-prem server or Exchange online in Office 365, it can't be its own. It can't send it back to itself. It has to send it somewhere, and we serve as that somewhere. And importantly, it serves also as a different location. So it's nice you're keeping your data not all bundled in one location. And importantly, if your current mail server is Exchange Online running in Office 365, it's all there together. It's nice to have a second copy, perhaps in your own data center, and we can do that. So there's a lot of benefits I'm throwing out at you here. We'll cover them in a little more detail, but this is such an important use case. Next slide. All right, we're going to spend some more time on compliance, beginning with this is called the alphabet soup, and they're all listed here. I know that we'll get a copy of the slides out to you so you can refer to these, but let me go through them here more of a kind of a high level, and I've kind of summarized them for you. It makes it easier to understand. So let's jump to the next slide. Two of the biggest industries that always are top of mind. First, in the financial services. Now, to understand this, there's really two parts. There's one of the important SEC rules. Now, these talk about retention, importantly. They talk about a 7-year retention on all broker-dealer communications. And importantly, this is only true for the SEC rules, that they actually specify the storage and type of storage. It's got to be it can be a microfilm but no one's doing that in this whole kind of online, magnetic disk storage world that we're in, and we have been in for just years and years. They specify the worm storage. You remember the EMC Centera made such a big name for itself because it fulfilled this requirement. That's wrapped around all part of the SEC rules. Specifically, now it's talking about broker-dealer. These guys have a trading desk. So you're going to be in financial services, a bank, a Wells Fargo. They will have a certain set of employees that are very tightly regulated, background checks, and they're monitored. And these guys do the trading, and this is what we're talking about here specifically with these rules. Then there's also under the second bullet, the FINRA, these same broker-dealers, traders, get monitored and supervised. They have actually a list of words that they look for, and they filter through their communication that might indicate that there's inside trading, or they might trying to promote a bad stock or all kinds of stuff. So it's a whole other world. Now let me stop there. We don't address that world with our product. We have the storage piece. We don't have the monitoring and supervision. So I want to make that clear, but I want you to understand the context. This is an important industry. Healthcare. Let's switch to that one. That's a big one. And everybody always talks about the HIPAA Act, and it's interesting. It's spelled HIPAA, and it's talking about patient information and its privacy. So Exchange servers are all over hospitals. They're used for staff, just like we use them in our jobs. So the calendaring and sending emails and arranging meetings, just everything's going on with the staff, and that's an important area you can come in and preserve with an archive system. That doesn't mean it's involved with the patient communication, if the hospital even allows that. It was only my doctor in the last few years they've set up a separate email communication on their website between the doctor and the patient. But even then, it's very controlled on. They're not giving you medical advice per se. They always, they'll answer kind of basic questions about your lab results or things. But that's a separate area, and that's controlled separately. but what still remains important is the overall restrictions on healthcare, on all the staff communication, on exchange. So we'll find very, very common that archiving is very prevalent in the healthcare industry. Okay, next slide. Just a couple more big ones here. In the areas of the federal, state, local government, one of the areas that just pops up, it's in the news, is called FOIA. It's a way of saying the acronym FOIA. And this is, by law, they just say, hey, Joe Public can walk into your local city, county, state, and request, I want to see the mayor's email from these dates. Now you have to have some credentials, or it has to be somewhat justified, but the bar is pretty low, and it's on that organization. They got so many days to respond back, and this has caused many of these organizations, all levels, to figure out and come up with a process on how they can respond to these FOIA requests. And email is a big one, and using an archive system is just a great way to manage that. And there's many others. Sarbanes-Oxley jumps out. That's well known. It covers all public companies. The big one there is it specifies that the retention period. So it gives there is this retention and implies a length of time. I believe it's 5 or 7 years. It doesn't tell you how you have to store it. That's beyond you. You have to keep it safe. But that's a big one. So that one, in fact, is so broad that it covers all public companies, and anybody does business with public companies. You have to keep all these different records, and in that list of record types, all your paperwork and so forth, is your email communication. So very important. Okay, next slide. Now the legal use case. A couple of important topics here. Let's spend a minute on these. I was excited. Mark, both of you and I were right there back, and I think it was 5 or 6. This whole thing about, I didn't even know the acronym FRCP. That's the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. I mean, they'll fill a library, but they had to write, and they wrote a complete new section on what they called ESI, electronically stored information. And what happened was a lawyer said, we got to get up to date, because we're not doing this. All the discovery rules were all about paper records and having to retain them and produce them, and all that negotiation goes back and forth between the plaintiff and the defendant and the judge. Before the case even starts, they got to sort out all the records that are going to be part of the case. What's going to be submitted? Well, everything is on electronic storage now. Not only is it on people's desktops using common programs like Word and Excel, or it was in their email servers, in their communication. To give you an idea where it began to be abused was when the two worlds were operating together. Well, it was operating under electronic storage, under the old paper rules. They said you have to produce all these communication, all these letters from the client, and a box would show up, and they would have printed out 100,000 emails, literally. And they just say, here's the box, go read them. And knowing that they could have given it to them on a thumb drive so they could search it electronically as they want to do, but they didn't want to help the other guys, so they would give it to them all on a big box of paper. And this is just one kind of fun example, but there's many, many issues that this whole group of lawyers got together and wrote all new rules regarding how to manage and produce electronically stored information for court purposes. So very, very important. In Europe, they do something a little different. In the United States, the general rule, I'm not a lawyer now talking here, but the general rule is the email belongs, your email you're writing and receiving every day as an employee belongs to the company. In Europe, it's a complete reverse. The email is always the personal property of that individual, and either by acknowledgement directly, or I think, or just they assume that they opt in is the word I'm searching for, where they opt in and say, okay, it's the business can look at it too. I opt in, I allow them to do that, but I have the opportunity if I want to take back that permission and keep my information private, certainly when I'm leaving the company. So in Europe, importantly, the companies have to be able to go in and isolate, if not remove, that information belonging to an employee who decides to, quote, opt out. Now, with an email system like ours, an archiving system, you can do that. You can do a search of, you know, everything star on Joe Smith and grab all this stuff, identify it, and decide if you want to remove it, do whatever you want, but you can manage that at that level. What do you do with Joe Smith when his email, he's been there 5 years, is on unlimited number of backup tapes spread across years? Well, there's a big exception for backup tapes. If they're not generally accessible as backup tapes are, and all your offline copies, and they're only there for you know, administrative recovery purposes, then there's an exemption for that. But importantly, GDPR, it's a broad policy written by the EU, specifically as specific rules about what I've just described, and that's noteworthy for our European companies operating in the EU, or perhaps even multinational corporations, American pharmaceuticals that have divisions in Germany or all over maybe other parts of the EU. Okay, let's jump. So this is a nice kind of way to summarize and look at the regulations. The bottom line, this is you know, cover my CYA for me, is that this is an area that's belongs to your compliance expert in your company, or I can bet your company has a consultant that they can refer to. So this is not as a technical, as an administrator, this is not our area of expertise, but importantly, we want to learn how it impacts our job. And these are the important functions here. It starts with being able to reliably collect the data. The question is, did you get all the data? Oh, we use journaling, sir. Okay, the court knows what journaling has been proven for years of use. So that's an important area to check off for collection. We need to search the data, make it easily accessible. That's written into the fine print of many of the regulations. Well, you know, to be able to search data, you have to index it. So that's a key requirement, and we do that. Preservation, of course, is things like it's on magnetic disk, but who can access the disk? What are the permissions? How does that work? All ways to kind of ensure that the data doesn't get tampered with or destroyed by some malicious behavior. So there's steps to do that. Manage the data. A big one is disposition. So we keep the data, but it's also what it implies is, oh, it's a 5-year retention. Well, at 5 years and 1 day or 1 week, we can get rid of it too. So that's something we can do. And importantly, based on indexing, we can do searches of the data by custodian, by date range, by message type, by the Boolean operators, and by keywords, all the normal functions. And that data can be collected, and then it can be produced. In the case of email, the exchange of the PST format is the most popular and serves as a very good vessel to transport tons of email, millions of emails easily. And you're going to be exporting them probably to an outside law firm if you're involved in a big litigation matter. They're going to want to just say, collect all this email, give it to me. We'll have our staff then begin the analysis of that data. And importantly, audits. You always need activity to prove someone's going to come in. This is just part of your compliance audit to say, where do you record your email records? Here, sir. How do you preserve? You know, you go through all the preservation steps and things you do. Then you want to show them proof. So you want to show an audit log, for example, of the last year. If they ask, who's accessed? What have they done? Did they do a search? Did they do a production? What email was removed? Was that authorized? Was that the right thing to do? So detailed activity logs down to every little action and who did it should be recorded by the archive. Good stuff. Let me kind of just show the product quickly. I'm looking at my clock. I'm getting about ready to shoot it over to you, Mark, so hang on there. But I'm talking about here, we've been talking about the mail servers, and we're very flexible. You see all the different mail servers we support there. I'm using Exchange constantly. It's such a dominant product, and that can be on-prem or in the cloud. And if you've caught me earlier, I've said we refer to it as Exchange Online, which is a bundle. And the product that's running the mail specifically is called Exchange Online. It's Exchange server. So that's the customer site or possibly the cloud site. Now, importantly, we sit here. Now we're not a hosted service. We're perpetual license. You buy the stuff. It runs on virtual machines as you'd expect on the whole modern deployment. We're not going to gush, require you to have an old physical 2003 Windows server, for goodness sake. But you can run it on virtual machines. That could be in your own private data center, of course. It might be on Amazon. Spin it up on EC2 and use S3 storage. You can do that as well. Many of our customers love that option. So, but it is your software. You buy the license. You install it. We help you do that and put it in that location that you choose, and then access by all the users. And Mark's going to show that in his demo. But that's how the basic topology looks. Okay, next slide. Good jump, Mark, to the next one.
I did hit next. There might be some lag time there. Did it flip to the multi-tenant? Yeah, single company multi-tenant.
And I think this is the last one before I jump it over to you, Mark. I want to mention this feature, and I'll put it in the context of one of our use cases. I talked about GDPR in Europe and managing email. So if you're a multinational company and you've got a bunch of employees that are based in Germany, I use that as an example. Let's say France. Perhaps you would like to manage and keep them separate. And with our product, you can do that. So instead of being restricted to the first example here on the left side, we can set up, and it says customer A and B, but this could be your company, but division A, division B, division C. I think you can see that instantly, how nice that would be to be able to have those in separate buckets, not commingled. And you can address them, whether it's retention requirements, search, or importantly, maybe responding to an opt-out request for an employee based in Germany. So that's a really neat feature that we built into our product that's unique to the archiving market. Okay, one more, I think, Mark, and then just to wrap up here. These just summarize some of the key features and benefits. I've got a couple of slides in these, and you can read them. I'll just highlight what I think are some of the most important ones here. So to do the big use cases around compliance and legal, the whole thing is about collection, preserving the data, index, make it searchable. These just jump out. They're just pillars of the product, and that's why we can deliver all the benefits for those important use cases. So we've absolutely got those important features. Next one. Small delay again. Huh. That's interesting. My screen's working. Give it another few seconds here.
Hey, Bob.
Yep.
Our phones just all hiccuped, so I got bumped off, so I had to dial back in. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, hit next slide.
Yep, absolutely.
There we go. Good. And here's just a few more. So I think we've covered all of these. So we've covered the use cases, the regulations, the importance for legal, the importance for compliance. I want to let you see the product now. So I've talked enough, Mark. Why don't you take it over for me, and let's. I know you can do a great demo of the product.
Sure. Yeah. Let me close this out. So hopefully you can see my screen. I have a browser open. So our solution is, as Bob mentioned before, it's deployed as a soft appliance or VM. We support all the popular flavors of hypervisor. This one the version I'm using today, this instance happens to be running in Amazon. AWS EC2. So I'm just managing it with the Google browser. So I'm going to log in as the Topline Administrator, which would be the super admin. Now, the super admin is the individual who would set up the entire instance of the archive, right? So if you look at our solution, again, we can manage multiple email domains or even multiple tenants, as Bob showed before. So as the top-end administrator, I'm looking at everything. I'm looking at the health of the actual archive server itself, how much storage is being used, things like how many average messages per day are being ingested and the size of those messages. And this is a demo instance, so we ingested a bunch of email over a very short period of time. So we don't really have a regular email stream, but the nice thing is we will show you based on your average daily email ingestion, the size of your emails. We'll actually project out how long the allocated storage you have will last based on the ingestion rate, and you can simply go out and grow the archive storage. It's fairly simple to do. And over here we're showing how much you have allocated versus how much storage you're actually using. The periodic purge, and as Bob said before, the second most important part of preserving the emails is making sure that they're disposed of as per your retention policy. So we run a periodic purge, which is a disposal purge on a daily basis. We look at the retention policy of each individual message, and if it's met its retention policy, we dispose of it. Now keep in mind, we're ingesting these emails, and as they come into the archive server, they're being full text indexed, both the messages themselves and the attachments, right? We're creating some metadata to associate with that message. So it does truly become a corporate record that can be tracked and managed through its entire life cycle. And we also do single instance storage across all this content, both the message itself and the attachment. So, if messages get sent to multiple individuals, we're going to store one copy only. So we're typically seeing about a 40% reduction in the amount of disk space you need to archive your emails. So, and again, even if you are one company, you may have multiple email domains. You can have multiple email domains ingested into the same archive. And here's where I would, as the top-line administrator, I would assign administrators to each email domain. Now keep in mind, anyone who's an administrator in the system doesn't actually have access to the content that's been archived. I mean, that's a big no-no when you talk about an email archive and chain of custody of the information, those types of things. So the only people that really have access, and I'll show you that in a minute, would be an auditor or a viewer who has the ability to search and look at everyone's content, or the users themselves who can actually go out and search their own content in the archive. And here would be a migration where we can actually move PST files for historical migration of email. We can move them to a directory, and basically this process will monitor that directory and ingest those PST files. Right now I don't have any ingestions going. If I did, you'd see all the content being listed that's being ingested into the system. It would give you a percentage, time remaining, that type of thing. And lastly, there's a configuration tab. It basically gives you information about the system, but keep in mind that even though each individual email domain, or even down to the user level, we can assign a very, very granular set of retention rules, there's always going to be a top-line retention rule for the entire instance here. In this case, it's basically about 10 years. I put that on there as a top line. But keep in mind that each individual email domain, user, whatever, can have its own retention policy. So if I go out and log in as an administrator who would oversee a single email domain, or maybe multiple email domains in the case of this administrator, I can see the emails that have been ingested in the system. And as Bob mentioned before, basically everything that happens, every user level has an audit log attached to it. So there's an audit log that I can access here as admin, and you see it shows all the activity of the auditor, searches that happened, and we can take that audit log and export it to a CSV file. So as the audit log sits in the system, it's immutable, right? It can't be tampered with, so you always have a immutable version of what's going on in the system for audit purposes. We can add users one at a time to the system. That's pretty easy to do as an administrator. I have the ability to do that, but typically you're going to make an LDAP connection to Active Directory, let's say, and that's what's going to allow your users to automatically be authenticated to the system. So, and we use LDAP because you know, for other systems outside of Exchange, for example, but typically this is how your users are going to authenticate to their content in the archive. Okay. Here's where the domains that I have access to as an admin. So I'm administering this onewisebrick.com, a single domain. Okay. We can actually create exception rules. So we can exclude email based on any of these criteria. So you say, well, doesn't that kind of go against the whole premise of an archive? Well, think about all the emails that get generated in a system on a daily basis. It may be just emails coming out of your backup and recovery system or your security systems or firewalls or whatever, kind of alert type email messages. Those aren't really considered business records. So in most cases, it's totally acceptable to exclude those. So we can exclude them by the to or from email address, or maybe there's a typical subject line for those types of emails. Those can be excluded. They don't need to be ingested into the archive. Here's where we go down and put retention rules in place. So I can put a retention rule on an entire email domain, or I can actually go out and create a retention rule based on an individual, a to or from, a subject, or maybe an attachment name. Maybe your financials have a certain attachment name. You need to keep those for 7 years versus everything else we only want to keep for 3 years. So we give you a very granular way to apply retention to the content that's in the archive. And then down here, legal hold. So it's very important if you have content that's in play from a legal perspective, you don't want that content to disappear due to retention disposition, right? So keep in mind, the only thing that can delete content from the archive itself is a retention disposition. If I put content on hold, so for example, here I have a user marketing at onewisebrick.com. That person is on legal hold. So basically all of their content is on hold indefinitely. It will not disappear due to retention disposition. And once that content is no longer involved in a legal matter, I can go out and I can lift the hold, and now that content will revert back to its original retention schedule. Okay. So let me log out here. I'm going to log in as an auditor. Now keep in mind the auditor has the ability to see everyone's content. So let's log in as auditor and look at the search tools that are available. So I could simply put a search criteria in here if I want to and take a look, but you know what, typically I'm going to use the advanced search tool where I can put in content to or from, subject line, subject and body. I can use Boolean search strings. I can choose to include or exclude attachment types here. Keep in mind that all the attachments are full text index as well. So when I do a search and I include the attachments, those get searched as well. I can put a date range in, and I can always save any search that I do. So for example, this shows my saved searches out there. If I want to go back and research based on one of these, I can just simply click the search tab and it'll give me my content from that saved search. And auditors have the ability to add tags or notes and associate them with a group or even one individual email. So once I've created tags or notes out there, I can go back and search by those. So when you think about maybe you have a team of people doing e-discoveries or searches or whatever, you can actually create these tags and someone on your team can go out and search again based on that commonality, that tag or that note, right? So once I've found the content that maybe I need to look at, I can click on the body over here and it will show me the content of that email, right? So now I can say, well, you know what, I need to maybe download a few of these to answer some sort of search requirement, right? So I can download those as download the selected. If I download more than one, it's going to, they're actually downloaded as EML files, which is a very universal file format for messaging. In fact, if if I download an email and put it on my desktop and click on it, it'll open up within Outlook, right? So I can either download a single email or I can download multiple email files, and if I want to, I can pull those into Outlook, into a PST, or you know what, I can just simply ship those off to my outside legal counsel where they might actually drill down deeper into those emails, right? So here's where I would actually add a notes associated or a tag. I can add those at any time. So it gives these viewers or these searchers or these reviewers very powerful tools to be able to go out and find this content. And going back to what Bob was talking about, think how difficult this would be if you had a search requirement, whether it be for a FOIA request or for e-discovery. Think how tough this would be if you had to go back to your backup media, whether that's backup tape, whether it's a backup that you have replicated up to the cloud, or even on disk, if you had to go back to your backup set and try to find email that matches the criteria, you know, with a to and a from address and a date range and maybe some keywords. That'd be pretty tough to do from a backup source. So this really does give the users very, very powerful tools to go out and find that content. And if I log out as the administrator and I log in as just a user, I'm a user called marketing. Now, if you look, I have the same access to the powerful tools that that auditor would use, except guess what? I can only search my content now as a user. I can only see what's been archived from my mailbox, right? So same tool, same ability to search, and as a user, I can go out and create my own tags. You'll see that those other tags don't exist, but I can create my own tags and notes and associate them with content that is mine. So if I wanted to go back and search later, let's say I tag some emails that I might want to use, I can go back and search on those. And again, as we know, most people use their email system as their file system as well. They keep all their attachments in there. And typically it's the attachments that people are looking for. So we full text index everything. They can go out and search for an attachment, an email, you know, whether it be a Word doc or Excel spreadsheet or even a PDF, whatever. They can go back and search by keywords on that attached content. So it gives users the ability to find their stuff, let's say. And if I close this here, minimize this, we do have the ability for the users to search right within Outlook. Now I'm going to open this Outlook tool, and I will tell you that the scaling of the tool is going to be way off because it's an issue with GoToWebinar. So I'm not trying to blame GoToWebinar, but we actually have a plugin that works within Outlook. It puts a couple tools up here. This one here is simply a link to the same web page that we just looked at, but this here is an actual tool where the end user can search, and keep in mind that this thing is huge. The scaling's all messed up from GoToWebinar. But if I wanted to go out and search for something in the body of an email, and I said, I'll take the date ranges off of there, and I can go out and find content. And now I can say, you know what, I'm going to select these emails here, maybe these 4, and I'm going to copy them right back down into my my email box. It dropped them in there right there, right? So it gives users the ability to drop things right back into their inbox. Now keep in mind, I didn't move it. I just have a copy of it. And if I went and sent this again, it would become a new record. It would be rejournaled. There'd be metadata associated with it. But this gives users the ability to download content from the archive directly into their email box without even have to jump into a web page. So it creates a self-service environment where admins don't have to go out and find emails that people have lost. And this helps our customers in that typically when customers move to an archive solution like this, they'll say, you know what, we have 8 years worth of email in our production email environment. We'd like to reduce that down to keeping 3 years of email in the production environment, and the rest we're going to ingest into your archive. So what this does is not only does it give the admin side of the house the ability to reduce down that production email size, that environment, but people still have access to their content, right? So that's it in a nutshell. I wanted to make sure that we covered it in enough time to answer any questions that people may have had. Mary, do we have any questions today? Bob?
Do we have any, Mary?
I don't see any questions yet, but
Let
for
me-
those people who are, yes?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
For our attendees, I'd ask you to submit any questions using the questions section of your interface so we can go ahead and get those answered for you. So just give that a minute.
I'll start out with the big question is why this product? And I'll put a little background. Then Mark, I want to hear your thoughts too. Definitely, email archiving has been an important application beginning way back, Mark, when you and I started. So back in 2002, 3, and 4, and many customers today still have those legacy email archives installed on premise. So importantly, we can serve as a replacement for one of those legacy archives. But Mark, let's talk about in the context, perhaps, and I know many customers are very attracted to Office 365. And in that kind of installment deployment scenario, Exchange Online running in Office 365 has unlimited mailboxes. It's got all this built-in legal and discovery. So then the question is, where is it driving me to then add this additional archive solution if I'm going to that Office 365? Mark, you want to answer that first, and then I've got some thoughts too about that.
Well, I mean, Office 365 does have some archiving functionality, but it's more based around long-term storage of email. There's not the types of controls that you can put in place. I think when you and I started out in archiving a while ago, it was really focused on financial compliance, and now the market has broadened so far because of e-discovery and legal and what's known as a defensible position, right? So if you have to produce emails, you have to have the ability to show that you have a retention policy in place and that you can enforce that policy in some way, not just be able to tell your users, hey, the retention policy is 3 years. So putting those controls in place gives customers what would be called a defensible position, the ability to be able to produce what they need to produce and not have to produce things that are out of scope as far as their retention policies go. Mm-hmm. I think that's important.
Excellent. I like those thoughts. Let me share with you my thoughts. First, in the back to the start, when you're at that point, speaking to the customer, he's going, we're going to go to Office 365. I've got a legacy email archive system, Enterprise Vault. You don't pick. There was over a dozen of them. First of all, what do I do with the archive mail from all the old employees? Do I want to move that up into Office 365? It can be done, but it's you got to jump through a lot of hoops to do that. Plus, it could be quite a bit of capacity. So we offer a solution. You can just take all that old email that's in the archive for ex-employees or from legal holds and just move it directly into our product, which you own. You buy the license, and the storage is yours. There's no capacity limits. That's important in our product. It's licensed like traditional software. It's not a service where you get dinged for capacity or usage or you have to pay monthly. You buy it, there's support and maintenance, and you can put as much storage behind it as you want. So that's, I think, a good reason right there is just all your old legacy archive capacity. Mark, comment on that first. How do you see that need when you're out talking to customers? Does that come up a lot?
Yeah, it does. I mean, they're looking for a way to shrink the size of their production email environment. And like you said too, when you have maybe you're in an industry, a company where turnover is really common, right? But you still, even if someone works there for a year and a half, if your retention policy is 4 years or 5 years or 7 years, you still have to keep their email around for that retention policy, right? So, and that can be expensive in a production email environment. But keep in mind that if we're ingesting historic email boxes, people that are no longer active into our system, they're not, our customers aren't being charged for an active email box ingestion license, right? We're just ingesting that historical content in. So we're kind of killing two birds with one stone. We're reducing the size of that production email environment, and we're helping them to reduce their costs as far as maintaining production email box licenses, for example.
I like it. I like it. Now, my other, I think, a really important driver for what we're talking about are UDP archiving, and that's for the legal compliance. Knowing that Exchange Online can journal, but it can't journal back to itself. So you got to give it some target. We can be that target. Perfect. In doing so,
Exactly.
you kill two birds with one stone. One, you got journaling. People have been using journaling since 2003, and the courts have agreed that it works, it's defensible, and people are used to it. And now you go to Office 365 and you say, well, I can't turn on journaling. Well, the answer is no, you can, but you have to have you have to have a target for it again. So we can be that target. And what's nice is now think about it. Jenny, how many mailboxes you journal, if not all of them, or at least all the top managers or something, whatever it is, you've got a copy of their mail. Now I don't think Microsoft's pretty darn reliable in Azure and that Office 365 cloud. But isn't it nice? It's like insurance. You've now got a copy of that data to preserve it importantly as a second copy. You put it in the location you want on your system, and you can search it and bang away at it without any restrictions. I'm not implying that the data is at risk in Office 365 or you can't access it there too, but I think it's nice that it also provides you that additional copy. Comment on that, Mark. That's an important one.
No, I agree. It's the additional copy plus the fact that we're taking that message and creating a corporate record, and now you're applying a life cycle to that record, right? So it's searchable, it's you can export a copy of it, you can find it, and also we put a retention policy on it, and we can also put it on legal hold as well. And we can be granular about how we retain it. So we really have, we've gone from a message in an email system with an attachment to being able to manage as a corporate record within a given lifecycle management policy.
Mark, I know you're out with customers. Finally, just to wrap up here, tell people how easy it is to see the product and what would be a nice next step to learn more.
The next step is if they want to have a one-on-one demonstration, get a hold of their sales rep here at Arcserve, and I'd be glad to give them a demo. The product is easy. We do have a trial version of the product available. As I said, it's deployable as a VM, Hyper-V, VMware, AML, and you can deploy it in a 30-day wide-open trial. You can test it in your own environment, see how it works for you. You can have this thing deployed, ingesting email in a matter of seriously like an hour. So it's an easy product to trial on site. And if you need some help with the trial, we'd be glad to step in and help you out too. So that'd probably
less than an hour. You go in Office 365, turn on journaling for a mailbox, and boom, yep, start to see it being collected. That's great.
Exactly.
So Bob, we do have some questions from the audience now. Can you see those?
Gotta open it up here.
I can go ahead and read them off to you.
Yeah,
so we have a question here. Does it work in a hybrid environment? So if a company has Office 365 and Exchange in the same organization?
Sure. Yep, we
it's
can do that.
It's an emphatic yes, because specifically on that Exchange Online, this is important. We keep going over quickly, but the Exchange Online environment has it's Exchange, just like on-prem. And in there, you're going to have the controls to turn on journaling, which is mailbox specific, and it asks for a target. And then our product gives you that target. It's spelled out when we install our product. So you specifically say, turn on journaling, click the mailboxes, and send it to this location. And boom, that's where we're going to store it. And you can see that done in 5 minutes. You'll be seeing that happen now.
Great. So we have another question here. So if one were to run this in an AWS or Azure VM, and even with the license for UDP archiving, would one still have to pay for the ingest, egress of the virtual environment? I'm not sure if either of you know the answer to that.
Yeah, we're not going to step on Amazon's toes, so any charges up and down that you would normally occur, is going to occur with our solution as well. So we can't change Amazon's rules as much as I'd like to.
This is true. Okay, one more question. How does the appliance work in a customer environment, like some kind of gateway or a mail relay to capture all the messages?
It's not a gateway and it's not a relay. Keep in mind that we don't tamper with the production email environment at all. Journaling is something that's a native process to Exchange, for example, and that's something that's set up by the administrator within Exchange to basically forward us a copy of every ingoing and outgoing mail in the system. So we don't put any, we don't live within the email stream. We don't interrupt the actual email stream to and from your production environment. We don't put any code on your production servers. We're using native tools within Exchange to forward this mail to our archive environment. Okay, so and it runs as a standalone archive server.
Got it.
Hope that answers your question.
And one last question. Danny just wants to confirm that this is for email only, which is correct. Yes, this is for email.
Today that is correct, but stay tuned. So.
Exactly.
Mary, we're going to get you out in the field doing installations now. You got it. You're getting it down.
It's only a matter of time.
No, it is specific to your email servers.
Yes.
Cool. Do you have any closing comments for us, Bob?
No. I think I hope you enjoyed the talk, and Mark, it's been a pleasure giving this webinar with you. And I'm gonna stop there. Mark, you have any final thoughts?
No, I'm good, Bob. Thanks a lot, and thanks for all the people who attended today. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob and Mark. As always, you did a great job today. And thanks again to everybody who attended today's session. If you have any additional questions, please do reach out to your Arcserve representative directly. You can contact us at arcserve.com. As the guys mentioned, you can download a trial right there. You can find our phone number to call us directly, or you can chat online with one of our representatives. So with that concluded, I will say thank you for attending today's session and have a great rest of your day.